Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to another Diablo 3 videocast for Don'tCritMe.com. I am Lawrence, aka Paradice, and with me today I have George and Brandon. We've got a lot of topics to come through today. As we record this, it's almost 2 weeks since the release, and let's just get started, eh? First of all, first topic, I'll start with you, George. Overall impressions of the game.
So I played since pretty much the launch day, and the first week I played a lot, and I think I've logged about maybe 48, 49 hours in the game total. The first playthrough on normal for me, it seemed really easy. I think it caught me off guard a little bit on how fast. I think I completed the normal difficulty in around 15, 16 hours. So that kind of caught me off guard. But I mean, I like the game. There's some changes that I'd probably implement later on, which we're probably going to go into further into the podcast. But yeah, I think it's good. You know, I enjoy playing it. As far as it living up to my expectations for the game, I would say it maybe lived up to about 80%. If I had to put a number on it, it lived up to about 80% of what I expected it to be. So
80%, hey?
Yeah. That's not my official rating review for the game, but yeah.
Sure. How about you, Brandon?
I'm about the same as George. I mean, I really did like it. It was really fun. I don't know if it was everything I thought it would be, especially Act 4. Act 4 seemed like a bit of an afterthought because it was so short and you really didn't see a lot of the high heavens. I mean, it was just like, you know. But I think I would have liked to see more of the stuff in the high heavens that you see like down in the background when you're looking down from the platform. You know, like that huge city.
Yeah.
It seemed like they kind of rushed it, but other than like Act 4 and everything, I was pretty pleased with it. The rest of the game, I liked. Like George said, normal was pretty easy. I kind of went through normal. You know, like just sailing right through it. But Nightmare was a little bit. I think Nightmare was how tough it should have been on normal mode, and then Hell is how it really. I mean, I had some issues early on in Hell, but I augmented some of the stuff that I was doing and kind of worked my way through that now, where it's a little bit easier for me. But I haven't even made it to Inferno yet, so who knows how that'll be for me.
Yeah, we'll get to Inferno a little bit later. So, Nightmare, when you guys met your first champion pack in Nightmare, did it kill you?
For me, it didn't. Like, I kind of breezed through Nightmare up until Belial. Like, Belial was the only boss in the entire game I did not one-shot so far. It gave me the most trouble, even up through Skeleton King and Hell. As far as the champion packs, I didn't have a problem with them in Nightmare, no.
Brandon?
No, me either. I was kind of doing. I had the same kind of build going for my Barbarian that I had going in Nightmare that I did in Normal, where I was doing 2 one-handers and just, you know, doing a ton of damage. Only in Hell did I really have to switch it up and kind of go more defensive and start kiting and stuff to where I could survive longer. And ever since I did that in Hell, I mean, it's hard for me to die on champion packs because it's just like, it's almost trivial now. I think Inferno is going to be a huge challenge, and from what I've heard, it's going to be a bit of a brick wall, so I'm expecting that.
Yeah. So from my own perspective, I'm probably with you guys. It is about 80% of what I'd hoped it would be, which is still good. Yeah, it's obviously got some issues, which we'll go into through the rest of this podcast, but I think overall it is a lot better than people were afraid it was going to be, I think. There was a lot of fear that it wouldn't live up to the hype, and it would be terrible, but it's actually, it's a solid game. It really is. Next topic. You guys went to the midnight launch. How did that go?
You want to take that one, Brandon, or?
It was good. I mean, it was fun. Max Payne was launching too, so we got to play a little bit of that. But no, it was fun, and we actually, with all the we went to the Microsoft Store launch in Atlanta at Linux, and with the launch they had going on, they had these little contests going on where you could win gift cards, and they had like a raffle where you could win gift cards too. I think George, you won one that was you won a game, and then changed it over for like a $50 gift card or something.
Yeah.
So George ended up spending like $10 for the collector's edition. I spent like
nice.
60.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good.
So here in New Zealand, our midnight launch was 7 o'clock at night. So that was me sitting in front of the computer waiting to log on at 7. Only to find that the servers were pretty much screwed. So what time did you guys get home, and did you play straight away? Did it work? What happened there?
You want to go?
Yeah,
I think you went to bed before I did.
Yeah, I think. Well, Brandon lived closer to the launch area that we were at, so he was able to get home first. And when we got home, we actually had enough time to toss the disc in and to load the game and kind of peruse the collector's edition and see what was in it. We tried at 3 o'clock in the morning when we were supposed to actually get in. We weren't able to, obviously, and I think I stayed up until it was 4 in the morning. It was funny because at like 2:30 in the morning, I was like, well, all right, I have confidence in Blizzard. I'm going to go get a nice cup of coffee and just stay up as long as I can. Well, I drank that cup of coffee, and then literally I was wide awake at 3 a.m. and I couldn't log in. It was the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah.
So I kind of just forced myself to go back to sleep around like 4:15 or so in the morning, but I think Brandon stayed up.
I stayed up till about 4:30, and I was finally able to get in a lot of Air 37s. But I finally got in at like 4:30, and then I played, like nonstop. Well, I mean not nonstop because I got kicked a couple times by the server. But I played through the night. Sun came up. I think I went to bed about 9 a.m. and took a nap, woke up, and then played all day.
Nice. I think I had better luck than you guys. I mean, I couldn't log in at 7, but by about 20 past 7, I had actually managed to log in, create a character, then got kicked, and then about 10 minutes after that I got back in and was able to start a game, and from there I was fine. So I think I got a lot luckier than you guys did there.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that we noticed was if you were actually in the game and playing, you were online, you were ready to go. But if you logged off for some reason, it pretty much put you at the back of the line to log back in, so you couldn't get back in. So it was kind of a mess.
Yeah, I think that's the way they want to do it, though. I mean, it sucks for the people that can't get in, but once you get in, protect the experience. And make it good for those people. I think, given that they weren't going to have enough capacity for the 4 million plus people that were trying to play at that time, I think they did what they could. Are you guys angry about the launch, or did you expect it?
I kind of expected it.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta expect that from a big launch. I mean, even though they had 12 years to work on it, I mean, with a launch like that, launch that big with that many people trying to play, you're gonna have issues. In this day and age, it's not like where you have I mean, it's an online game, so it's not like a single-player game where you just give people the game and there it is. I mean, if you're going to have server-based play, then you're going to have issues because servers aren't 100%.
Yeah.
I understand, though. I mean, I was reading a lot of the angry comments from people, and I mean, I kind of understand the whole, Blizzard has a lot of money. They have a lot of, I guess, teams that work on, their data centers, their servers, to make sure that they're running at peak performance. They had that open beta to kind of test, I guess, the load balancing on the servers. But, the first 24 hours, it's kind of I guess for me, whenever I get an online-based game, especially on launch, it's kind of the grace period that I have before I actually get upset. I think we were still having problems on the second day, and there was a period of time, I think it was on a Wednesday, between like 12 noon and 3:30 or 4 o'clock, we couldn't get on.
They had that maintenance thing.
Yeah, it was a maintenance, so that was really frustrating, um, considering it was kind of at a peak time
Yeah.
during the day. So, but yeah.
Okay. Pretty much, yeah. So pretty much, it wasn't
Sounds
perfect.
like yours went smoothly.
I was pretty happy. Yep. So I was heading to bed at just about that time that maintenance started happening. So got back up and everything was working again. It was like, wow, what a great launch.
Lucky.
For once, yep. Okay, next topic. So our next topic here is the story of Diablo 3 and the world itself. So what did you guys think of the storyline? Was it cliched? Was it good? Let's start with you, Brandon.
I thought it was good. I will say, I actually texted George. Or no, I didn't text him. I sent him a message. No, we were on Vent. Okay, I got to the end of Act 1. Spoiler alert. But I got to the end of Act 1 where you find out that the star was actually Tyrael. And I was putting stuff together. And, like, I was getting pieces of the sword, this and that. When I found out it was Tyrael, I was like, George, you got to get to the end of Act 1, quick. And he had, like, logged off or went to bed or something. I was like, oh. I mean, it was awesome. That part was really good. The ending was kind of... I think the ending might have been a little cliche for me. Just because, you know... I guess it's because I always kind of figured that Leah was kind of born of Diablo.
Yeah.
I always said Diablo was totally her dad. Whether that was somewhat joking or not, I kind of had this thing in the back of my head that told me, you know, that Diablo was sort of, in fact, the Wanderer or whatever.
Well, it has been like an open secret for months that, you know, Leah got corrupted at some point during the story. From all the data mining, you could see her corrupted portrait and stuff, so that was kind of to be expected. The biggest thing with the story, I actually really liked most of the story. The only frustrating thing for me was Leah's character development. Like, she went from saying, "Oh, Uncle Deckard, I don't believe any of your stories. They're all just stories. I'm going to throw you a book of Herodic wisdom on your funeral pyre." But then elsewhere during the same act, when you're like going into the crypts and tombs and fighting skeletons and zombies and stuff, she's going, "Oh, this reminds me of when me and Uncle Deckard used to go and almost die in all these crypts." And I'm like, but you didn't believe that stuff was real, and what?
Yeah. Yeah.
The other
I remember that part.
Yeah. The other thing that is interesting for me is where do they go from here in terms of an expansion pack? Like,
Jordan and I were talking about that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, personally, I'd like to see more of Imperius.
Imperius? Yeah.
I think because he didn't die. If you look at where they shatter the crystal arch or whatever, he didn't die. They're still kind of like laying there moving, just incapacitated. So I think that could make for a really good story. Between, you know, Tyrael and Imperius, because Imperius hates humans, and I think it could be a good expansion, because I think he would make a really good bad guy.
He would make a good bad guy, yeah. I was a little bit disappointed when we didn't get to fight him, to be honest, at the end.
Yeah.
The other two things, just before I get your thoughts, George, the other two things that I'm a little bit sad about is Magda. Like, you're chasing Magda through the better part of 2 acts, and then that's it. She's gone. I thought that was a real failure to capitalize on all of that capital that they'd built in the Magda story. And also Zoltan Kuhl, I really liked him, and I was disappointed that all of a sudden, there's an inevitable fight coming with him and you kill him. And yeah, I thought they could have made so much more with that character. He was probably the most interesting character to me out of everybody in the game.
Yeah.
Right, George, sorry, go ahead.
No, so I think that as far as the character development, the acts seemed really short to me. They could have spent a lot more time with the character development. taking it a little further, going a little deeper into the story. I think the biggest thing when Deckard Cain did die, I would have expected that Blizzard would have given him a better death. He's been in the game since the beginning, and for him to go out like that, either they're gonna. Yeah, honestly, like I have a strong feeling. We can come back to this later in the whenever an expansion is released. I think he's going to have a part in the next expansion, whether he's going to come back as something, or if he's got a part in the what is it called, the Aegis Council, maybe. I don't think that's the last we've seen of him. Yeah. I think Blizzard might have other plans for that storyline, but as far as I guess my playthrough, the original playthrough, I of course love the cinematics. It just was really too short for me. It should have been a lot longer. I don't know if the difficulty shouldn't necessarily make the game longer. It being 4 acts, I think they could have made 6 acts out of that game and kind of developed the characters a little more. I don't know if any of you guys have watched the collector's edition DVD, but they kind of go into describing how they wanted Leah to be a character that players could empathize with and kind of connect with, which I think they did a good job, but I really think they should have done that with other characters as well. But yeah, that's my take on that whole thing.
Yeah. Just while we're on the topic of the story, the way that the lore was presented, with a lot of it being, little audio files that played while you're running around the world, did anyone else get seriously frustrated by the fact that if you clicked on a satchel and then clicked on a quest, or the other way around, they just immediately cut each other off, and you're like, damn it, now I have to go into the lore panel and randomly listen and stand still so that nothing else happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know for me, whenever I know there's a lot of people that do play the game and they just kind of click through everything, kind of close the boxes. And my first playthrough, I really just listened to everything because I wasn't sure what to expect in the later acts. So I was like, I don't want to miss a hint or a clue on how to defeat a certain boss. So I kind of listened to the whole thing. And what I would do is when a lore panel would pop up, I would X out of it and continue playing, and then either my follower or I would say something really stupid in game and that had nothing to do with what I'm doing, and it would just completely shut it off. So that was kind of frustrating.
Yeah. Other than that though, I do like the way that there was a whole lot of sort of semi-optional lore that you could click on and listen to as you were fighting. I think that's a really good mechanic. And particularly, I don't know if you guys know this, but with Leah's journals, for example, there are 7 chapters, and if you keep going back into the inn and listening, depending on where you are in the Skeleton King quest, you'll get her thoughts on each part of the chain as you're doing it. I thought that was really cool.
I didn't know that.
I've
got a question about the... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, going back to one thing that he said about... or that you said about Magda Lawrence, her playing a really small part. To me, that kind of made sense, because she was sort of a pawn of Belial, so, she wasn't really like a main boss. So for me, it kind of made sense for her to be not play a huge part, because she wasn't, she kind of said that she was servant of Belial, this and that, so I think the part that she played wasn't too small, or... Personally, that's my opinion. I don't think it was
Diablo 3 was the first time they introduced Leah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I kind of agree with Brandon on that. The fact that this was the first time we saw Leah, I think they did an alright job with, expanding on her story, so...
At the end of Act 2, speaking of Belial, when your character, gets into the Emperor's room or whatever, and he goes, now I know who you are and I'm gonna kill you, Belial. Did anyone else think, oh, I've missed some piece of lore somewhere where the character figured that out?
Yeah.
Oh, I knew that all along, apparently.
Yeah, that's right. Oh well.
Thanks for
To me,
in, buddy.
to me, the way the game played, it seemed like there were a lot of groups throughout when they first started developing Diablo 3. It seemed like there was a lot of teams that worked on either the lore panels, the game development, and I'm wondering, during this course of, Diablo 2 to now, if those people, maybe transitioned to other groups, started working on other things, and then you got people that really kind of not sure, they know what's going on, they see, I guess development notes, but they kind of start working on whatever that person kind of left behind, and I think we're starting to see some of those inconsistencies in the game, so...
Yeah, I think you might be right. Some characters definitely, it almost feels like there is a missing quest line or something like that would have introduced you to them a little bit more. And and you can tell that sort of through contrast with the characters that do have that full development. Like in Act 3, the whole Sidea, the entire quest through the Heart of Sin and all of that, you learn a whole lot about who Sidea is, and then 2 minutes later you're fighting Asmodan with no other introduction. It's really weird. Just before we move on from the world, the other thing I wanted to touch on was the randomization of the levels themselves. There's been a lot of complaints and whining about how the levels are basically constructed from gigantic random blocks, and once you've been through one of those random blocks, you'll spot it anywhere and see it, and it's not really that random. What do you guys think, George?
We were actually talking about this last night because at one point last night, Brandon and I were on the same level and same quest on Hell mode, and we had to go in. There was like this side dungeon that you can go into. It wasn't part of the quest, but you can just go into it. And I went into it, and it was called the Watchtower. And I went into it, and I was like, wow, this looks really familiar. And it is the part in Act 1 where you're going down to fight John Dar, right before you get to,
yes.
I guess.
Yeah.
You go a little deeper into the Royal Crypts. So I saw that, and I mentioned to Brandon, I was like, Brandon, you need to find the Watchtower. So we're thinking, all right, it's completely random. They said it was going to be random, so he's not going to get the same level that I got. Well, he went into it, and it was pretty much the same. So that was kind of disappointing for me.
I definitely recognize in everything that was in the beta, I can immediately spot that. Because I've played that whole area hundreds of times. I think the level, like in Act 2 and the Wilderness, and even the Act 3 stuff with Bastion's Keep and the battlefields, I think that there's probably enough randomness there that unless you are looking for it, you'll probably be okay. What do you think, Brandon?
I think, going back to what George said about that level looking exactly the same, I don't think it would have been an issue for me. Here's the thing. We know that they said that these instances were going to be different, and they would just have different building blocks in the middle, and all look different, randomized. But for me to go in and see something that looked exactly like something earlier in the game, same room and everything, that to me is laziness. I mean, because it looked the same for George and I. It wouldn't have bothered me otherwise, because, like, if you go into, if the room that I fight the Skeleton King looks exactly the same as the one that George fights him in, fine. That's a big part of that's the level. That's what it's going to look like. But if you reuse something from Act 1, it was Act 1, but if you reuse something from that part of Act 1 in a different part of Act 1 and they look exactly the same, that to me is sort of cutting a corner, and I saw a lot of that in Diablo 3, just kind of laziness. I know George and I have talked about this.
Yeah, for a game that was in development for so long, and I guess they couldn't decide on a release date. To me, when I played the game, it felt like a game that was maybe in development for a couple years, maybe. Definitely not the length of time that we had to wait for it. So.
Fair enough. The thing that disappoints me the most is that in the later difficulties, I don't know if you guys remember from Diablo 2, but in the later difficulties, the randomly generated dungeons got bigger. And so by the time you were in the end of Hell difficulty in Diablo 2, I can't even remember the name of the area now, but you'd go into the final dungeon, and each level would just be huge, and so it would take a long time to get through it. Although everyone just teleport glitched their way through or whatever, but I was disappointed that the levels through the difficulties are all essentially the same.
Yeah.
Oh well. Moving on. Difficulty in general. So I'll split this into probably two sections because Inferno really is its own. But the difficulty.
Actually,
sorry, go ahead.
Real quick, going back to what you just said about the levels, I was thinking this earlier. Going through on Hell in the what was it? The Oasis.
Yeah.
I forgot what it's called. Anyway, that Oasis part. There was a dungeon where you pull two different levers to open this door, go in and find treasure. I hadn't seen that in the previous two acts.
Yeah.
So it's nice to kind of see these different things that you can't see every single time. And then that part of the randomization is great because you're not going to go through and see the same exact level every single time. Because that was actually a really cool level. You go in, first you open one lever, or you pull one lever, and this group of elite mobs comes, you kill them, and then you pull the other lever, go in, and find this nice, really nice treasure-like room where I got some decent loot. So, I mean, that part of the randomization is cool, but
yeah,
it's nice to know you can go through the game several times and not see the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Right, so anyway, difficulty in general. So normal through Hell. I know we touched a little bit on this in the introduction, but personally, there was a spike for me in Nightmare where all of a sudden I couldn't just, as a monk, charge into an elite pack and just cyclone strike them, which pulls them all into you and just melee them to death without worrying. All of a sudden, I did have to worry about my own health. But as soon as I adjusted to that, I wasn't really challenged again until Inferno. There was nothing scary about Nightmare or Hell mode, particularly on any difficulty. What did you guys think? I know that currently you guys are in Hell. Brandon, we'll start with you, I guess.
I would say for me, that sort of big slap in the face with some of the elite mobs came. Nightmare wasn't really that big of a deal for me. Hell, on the other hand, in Act 1, I forget where it was, but I want to say it was in the Highlands area, where you go in and fight those goat men. One of their dungeons there is this spider who has elite minion, or invulnerable minions, sorry, he was a rare elite, and he has invulnerable minions, and as a barbarian, it's a pain in the butt to target him without doing AoE, and by the time I get in there to do damage, he's already killed me. They're basically one-shotting me. That's when I sort of was like, okay, I have to change my strategy, because I can't just go charging in and kill these guys, like I could in the other difficulties, because I was just getting hammered. It was ridiculous. And that's one of the main things that kind of hit me right in the face, is that some of these elite mobs, actually a lot of these elite mobs, are harder than the bosses.
Yeah, that's the major problem on all of the difficulties except normal, is that the bosses, if you can get to them, are really a joke.
Yeah. Skeleton King was a pushover.
Yeah.
Magda and the Butcher were a pushover. It's like, I should die 50 times, not literally 50 times, but I should die numerous times on a boss, not numerous times on a trash mob that's just, elites. Steven, one of our friends that plays, he said that he and a group of two other guys, they died like 50 times just on this champion group.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's a little bit lopsided for me.
Yeah, definitely, and that's how we saw, the world first Inferno kills and stuff like that. Those guys had no chance against even the normal mobs. They were pretty much corpse walking their way to the bosses, but then they actually managed to kill the bosses, which is a little bit of a slap in the face to the overall difficulty. I mean, I know that Blizzard intended the champion packs to be harder than the bosses, but the bosses are just trivial in comparison, which is, I think, wrong. What do you think, George?
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been honestly the first game where, and I consider champion packs the same way, they're trash mobs. Just like you would go into a dungeon or a raid, you would encounter a bunch of trash all the way up to the boss. And if Blizzard ever implemented any type of raid where the trash was harder than the actual boss, there would be riots. I mean, well, you'd have the casual players that would probably like that, maybe, but for a boss to actually be a lot easier than the trash, it doesn't make sense on why they would design it that way. Now, as far as the boss design goes, to me at least, it only seems like there's only changes in the multipliers, the health, how hard they hit. There's no other, tactics or things they do differently throughout each different mode. So there's no surprises when, and I could be wrong, there's no surprises when you go fight the Butcher in Hell or Nightmare or Normal. It's pretty much the same fight. Yeah, it's the same fight. Especially Diablo, I would have considered they would have changed, some of the way he fights, some of his patterns, something to make it different each time you go in, not just raise the health, make him hit harder, we're done,
Yeah, so in Inferno, that's the same. The only difference is there are time limits. So the Butcher, for example, he's got all the same mechanics, but if you take too long to kill him, then the entire floor will catch fire and you'll burn to death. But yeah, I was really disappointed like that. Like, I was hoping that the mechanics that you could almost sort of see in the boss fights would be developed more. Like the Skeleton King, how if you move around correctly, he'll kill his own skeletons with his big swings. I really hoped that you were going to need to do that in the harder difficulties, but no, you don't have to. The fight just takes longer. It's not any harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have liked to seen a way that you can change the mode that you're fighting the boss. So there would be like a hardcore switch that you can flip on before you fight a boss. It would change the mechanics of the fight. It would raise the difficulty, make him hit even harder, but also change what drops from a boss like that to make it difficult, to give it some change for the players that actually want to prove their skill, rather than just, their only, form of accomplishment is, some random achievements and beating Inferno. It'd be nice to have like hardcore modes that you could switch on for like the Butcher or any other boss.
Yeah. There's been a lot of talk on the forums that it would be really nice if in the harder difficulties the bosses actually got one or two champion affixes, like Mortar or whatever.
Oh god.
So depending on which ones they randomly picked, that could become really difficult. But it would add a random element to the boss fight, which might make it a little more interesting.
Yeah.
That to me is is what they should have done. I don't think bosses should have been harder by giving them more health and making them do more damage. I think they should have been harder by implementing more tactics. Like I was telling George the other day, the Cataclysm 5-mans, for example, were a good example of that. The regular 5-mans, they were just normal dungeons, you run through them. The heroics, on the other hand, they were tough because you had to think and you had to use different strategies, and it wasn't just like run through the same as you could in the normal mode.
Yeah.
That's the way I think that the harder modes should have been. There should be, more phases to Diablo's fight, or Asmodean's fight, or Belial's fight. More, more abilities that sort of made you play the game different as opposed to just running through it like you had before.
Yeah.
The Diablo.
Blizzard.
Yeah. Sorry. I was just going to say the Diablo fight is probably the most underwhelming of all of them. because it's the last boss, it's Diablo himself, the game's named Diablo. I had hoped that he would be the most interesting fight, but to be honest, like the Belial fight is more interesting, and even the Butcher fight, to me, there are more mechanics involved than Diablo, which is just dodge those traps that he sticks on the ground, and that's it, and just kill him.
I think I guess the health wells that they have sitting on the sides of that fight, they don't need to be there. I really don't think they need to be there, because I think they're on a 30-second refresh. I think even in Hell, right? They're on a 30-second refresh?
In Hell, they seem quicker to me.
Maybe.
I could be wrong, but they seem quicker, because I would have been dead if they weren't there.
Yeah, the Blizzard has had 3, as far as MMOs go, they've had 3 expansions. And out of those 3 expansions, they have had a lot of boss fights, a lot of raid fights. And to see that this was all that they could come up with for Diablo, it's, it does come off as a little lazy. Yeah.
Okay. Lest we get stuck on this one particular issue, we've got plenty more issues to go through. So, Inferno mode itself, I know you guys aren't there yet, but I'm sure that you have heard and read and talked a lot about the difficulty in Inferno mode. So the game was completed, not a full clear, but a run through in Inferno within 3 or 4 days of release. And since then, Blizzard have identified a number of abilities that are pretty much exploitative or abusive and allow some classes to get the entire way through Inferno without having the gear that Blizzard thought would be needed. And so they've been nerfing and hotfixing that, particularly the Wizard and the Demon Hunter. What do you guys think? A lot of people were really angry by those patches as well. It's like, hey, we figured out a smart way to play and now you're killing it. Why are you doing this? What do you guys think about that? Let's start with you, George.
When I was watching some videos about them talking about Inferno mode originally, it shouldn't have been cleared in 3 days. It should have taken months. As far as the exploits for the Wizard and Monk,
Demon Hunter,
the Wizard and Demon Hunter, it's understandable. I understand why they did it, because, like, I think we were talking in another podcast that there shouldn't have been one specific build that any class should adopt to beat the game, or it's required to beat the game like that. But if they would have kept it, and if they didn't nerf those abilities, you would have had everyone rolling a bunch of Wizards and rolling a bunch of Demon Hunters just to beat the game, and get their achievement and walk away from it. So I think it was a good choice to do it. And of course, whenever they nerf any class, there's always going to be some crying about it. So I don't see the big deal in it.
Yeah,
I'm really surprised it wasn't a melee nerf first.
There was a nerf to a monk ability, a defensive ability that gave a shield. But as far as I know, none of the monks had really capitalized on that to beat Inferno. It was letting them get further into Inferno than they should have been able to, but not like bypassing entire groups of mobs like the Demon Hunter ability was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. I think it's unfortunate that situation wasn't already figured out, like especially the Demon Hunter one, where it shouldn't take a genius to look at the Demon Hunter's skills and say, hey, this one gives you 3 seconds of invulnerability and it's on a 3-second cooldown. I mean, come on, figure that out. But with the situation that did exist, they needed to remove it as quickly as possible. I think there was no other option for the longevity of the game.
Yeah.
The other stuff that we want to talk about in Inferno specifically is the difficulty variation by class. So I know a lot of monks are really struggling in Inferno because they're a melee class and you can't melee really in Inferno. If you get hit by things, you pretty much die. Whereas wizards and demon hunters and witch doctors can stay at range, and they have to kite a whole lot, but they are able to get further on equivalent sort of level gear than monks and barbarians can.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've sort of had to try and adapt my strategy from standing there and doing a lot of damage, mainly just DPSing my face off, changing my strategy to doing a lot of kiting and running around and bumping up my vitality so I don't die in 2 hits. But yeah, a lot of kiting.
Yeah.
Just in hell. Yeah. So Inferno, God knows, I may have to spend all my time buying new gear just so I can make it through.
Yeah, so the thing I've found as a monk in Inferno is that your range of possible builds, it slowly narrows until you've got more and more skills that you actually are required to have. So in normal and nightmare mode, I could pretty much go with any set of skills I wanted. In Inferno, I now absolutely need Inner Sanctuary, which is the invulnerability one. I need the healing one. The variation that we were supposed to get with infinite options, it all goes away until there's only like a few builds that we've figured out so far that are even viable. And with the kiting, enrage timers on champion packs in Inferno makes that a very difficult strategy.
Melee shouldn't have to kite. To hear that a barbarian, like a warrior type class, has to kite something around, especially in a single player, if you're doing something solo, I understand once in a while, kind of backing off, I think we saw a video the other day where a barbarian literally had to kite a champion pack around 50 times to actually take it down. To me, that's just ridiculous.
That's what I've had to do with some of them is, what I'll do with my barbarian is, get enough hits to get some fury up, run around, turn around, do seismic slam, take some damage down on them, go in and get a few more hits, run around, let them chase me, do seismic slam again, turn around, run, and it's just like, are you kidding me? I'm a barbarian. Yep. I should be able to sit there and just, destroy these guys. Without being stupid.
OP.
That's the difficulty though. So as a melee class, if you could stand and tank, what would be the skill requirement?
Not necessarily stand and tank, but be able to stand there for more than... Being a barbarian in heavy armor, I shouldn't get one-shotted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's just... I shouldn't get one-shotted. That's one of the issues that I had with Guild Wars 2, is I'm a warrior, and I'm like the squishiest thing ever. A warrior should not be getting just destroyed in 2 hits.
Now, yeah. Brandon, you could probably clear this up for me, but I don't think, from what I've seen, I haven't taken a barbarian past 5 or 10, but there's not a lot of damage mitigation spells that you can cast, like a shield wall type cast.
There's one called, what's it called? I don't ever use it, but it's ignore wounds or something. I forget what it's called, but there is one where you can basically be invulnerable for a few seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't used it a lot because I did try using it. It didn't really help me all that much. I would still...
Yeah.
Basically what I've been doing is using a lot of stuns so that it gives me time to run around. I'll stun them with ground stomp, get some hits in, and then run, turn around, do seismic slams so that I do some more damage, and then repeat that process. War Cry also helps a lot too because it bumps up your vitality so you have a little bit more life. But yeah, I've really had to adapt my playstyle.
In terms of the in-game class mechanics, the monks are supposed to be all about damage mitigation with really high dodge and whatever, and the barbarians are supposed to have really gigantic life pools and life-stealing type attacks. So that's the difference there, George.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, Inferno mode. There is something promising though on the horizon. So what Bashiok said on the forums is that they deliberately launched the game with Inferno being way too hard, with the intent to see what builds were able to complete it anyway, so that they could nerf them, and then they could rebalance the Inferno content to be fair for everybody. Which kind of sucks to be playing it right now as not an exploitative class, but I guess that does give us a little bit of hope for the future. I don't know, what do you guys think? Had you read about that, or what do you reckon?
I know for me, I don't mind not being able to beat the game right now. I think there should at least be a month or two before people really should start beating the game. Obviously, class imbalances, exploits, they're going to happen in a game like this. As far as now, when you say they're going to adjust the difficulty in Inferno so that everyone has the ability to beat it, you're not talking about nerfing champion packs and bosses, right?
I don't know that they're going to make it so that everyone can beat it, but I think that right now, this like monsters in Inferno Act 3 can hit for 140k, and I don't think that anyone has got vitality that high. So I think they're going to retune it down into like at least not mathematically impossible levels.
The one thing I noticed about this game is it's not really about skill. It's more about your skill choices. And I mean like player skill. It's more about your skill choices, your runes, and the type of gear you have. You can take a really, really good player and that knows what he's doing, has played the game a lot, and if he doesn't have the right gear or the right build, he's not going to be able to have a chance at beating the game just by skill alone. For me, I don't like that in a game. It would like if, let's say for Dark Souls, for example, it requires skill, right, Brandon? It requires someone that knows what they're doing. They need to be aware of their environment. They need to be aware of, something more than fire pits coming up from the ground, which is pretty obvious. They need to be aware of what's going on and learn boss mechanics to actually beat the game. And you don't have to have top tier gear to do that. So,
yeah.
But I think that's been the Blizzard model as they've grown. It's really a lot about the gear, less about the player skill. And not to bring Warcraft into it, but I guess in the vanilla days, it required skill. It required a lot of people to coordinate. As the game evolved, it required less of that. People could farm badge for gear. It was pretty much gear score, gear, less about the player skill. So that's my...
I probably disagree that World of Warcraft ever required a high degree of skill.
I use that loosely.
For me, it's sort of on the same. It's sort of on the same level as Diablo, because Diablo is sort of a grind fest for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like George was saying, Dark Souls is that sort of skill-based game where you have to dodge and block at the right times, or you'll be dead. But it's not the same kind of game. This, I think people try to use that example, like that I've seen on Reddit and other forums, and the hardcore Diablo guys are like, no, that's the way that Diablo has always been. You're supposed to grind for gear, and it's supposed to be hard, this and that.
Yeah.
Which, I sort of agree with, but then at the same time, that's my main gripe, is that the bosses should be hard. The bosses should be the hardest part of the game.
Yeah.
For me. I shouldn't die more times on a trash mob than I should on bosses. Period.
The thing that you're saying about grinding for gear, it's kind of made pointless now because of the auction house. Who in their right mind is going to spend... And I know there's going to be people that do it, and I'm probably going to get yelled at for saying this, but who in their right mind is going to spend 6, 7, 8 hours grinding something to get one piece of gear that they really, really need to progress, when they could go on the auction house and take their million gold and find it just right there, sitting for them? I don't like the auction house for that reason.
I'm glad that the real money auction house got pushed back, because that's going to make it pointless. That's going to make the difficulty level pointless if people can just go in there and buy the gear with their real money, regardless, and then just cruise through Inferno. Cruise through. I mean, it's still going to be tough, but still just buy the gear rather than work for it. That's, I don't know. I'm a traditionalist, so I like to work for my stuff in the game.
Yeah, that is one of our topics. So we'll combine these and we'll do this now. So right now, the auction house, the economics of the items on the auction house is such that the jeweler and the blacksmith aren't viable. The jeweler, they start becoming useful when you get beyond the level of gems that can ever drop in the world, because then people have to craft them to make them, and so they know what the costs are. But the blacksmith, you are never. It is almost certain that you are going to get a better deal on the auction house than ever rolling up a random item from the blacksmith that happens to have the stats that you want. The crafting for level 60 items is ridiculous. Like even a level 60 chest with 4 random properties, so not anything special, it costs 50k in gold just to craft one, and you can buy one with stats that you know are going to be good for you for less than that on the auction house right now. And it's really sad because I was really looking forward to the crafting system, but I don't know what they've done, but it's you would be foolish to not to use it right now, which is really sad.
Yeah, that's one of the things that in the beta I was like, oh, so we get a blacksmith. This could be pretty cool. And then I get the real game and I get to a point. I think my blacksmith is making like illustrious gear now, and I just stop because I'm like, this stuff is garbage. I'm already past the point where I need this. And even I was reading an article the other day that basically said, unless you're making stuff at the highest level with your blacksmith, and then selling it on the auction house, it's really not viable because you put so much money into that blacksmith. I mean, just to train one level, it's thousands and thousands of gold.
Yeah,
it's pretty ridiculous. It's not even worth it to me.
Yeah. So I've found a couple of rare plans in Inferno that required the blacksmith to be at max level 10. So I thought, why not? And I trained him up to level 10, which did cost hundreds of thousands of gold. And I can now make those items. They're only yellows, but I still don't want to. They're still not worth it. It's really disappointing. And maybe the blacksmith is only viable for legendaries or sets. I haven't seen what the plans on those look like. But either way, it's really sad. I don't know if you guys remember back in the beta, there was a patch or two where the blacksmith's items had a fixed affix and random ones. So like you could craft a helm and it would have plus magic find and plus 1 random property. And that was really awesome because you go, okay, I need a helm with magic find. Let's craft a few and we'll see what the other random one ends up being. But I looked through every plan apart from the legendary ones and set ones now. None of them have any predetermined affixes anymore, which just seems like a gigantic backward step to me. I don't know. What do you think, George?
I totally agree with that. I don't like the way the gear is being handled at all in the game right now. I think it's very broken. As far as the crafting goes, I had a feeling that the crafting wasn't going to be very viable at all, just because there's no, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's no preset loot tables. For everything is randomized as far as loot goes, as far as the drops on the champion packs and on the bosses. There's no preset loot tables, so you can't say, all right, I need to run hell over and over to farm until this one piece of loot drops on Asmodan that I need. You have to it's a crapshoot to see what you get as far as the gear that you actually need. So what I would like to see implemented into the game is a reforging system to where if, let's say you've got a helm with intelligence and you're a barbarian, you can reforge that piece of gear to take a portion of that intelligence and put it into strength. Now, it's not going to take the entire value, but it's going to put a little bit of it. So it'll make that gear a little better for you, and probably make it a little more worthwhile to keep around rather than vendoring.
Yeah.
So that's my idea
I
on that.
agree.
There was I think another system that I think Blizzard talked about, which was okay, you could pay to craft an item or whatever, but you could pay after that was done, you could pay more to craft an item that was guaranteed to be at least as good as that one. So you could, it was very expensive, but you at least had an idea of what you were going to get. Yeah, right now it's just it's there are major issues with itemization.
I mean, it's borderline just rage-inducing for me. Sometimes it's just frustrating because the loot rate for me is I'll get maybe 1 in 20 items that are somewhat usable for me. But for the most part, it's complete crapshoot, like George said. Somebody on one of the Reddit posts about Inferno difficulty was saying, oh, if you're having issues, just go through and farm, you'll get better gear. And I'm like, I could if I knew where to farm for what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just farming and you're getting random stuff, you really have no idea, because all the stuff that I've got is random purple crap for demon hunters and wizards and witch doctors. I mean, what am I going to do with all this huge stack of quivers that I've got in my inventory?
Quivers and mighty belts are what I find more of than anything else.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
What am I going to do with this stuff? It's crap. Every once in a while I'll get something useful, but it's very rare. Usually I end up buying it on the auction house.
I'm okay with the principle of farming, but the main problem that I have is that I'm sure Blizzard intended people to farm in Hell to prepare for Inferno, but the way that it's been designed, Hell gear isn't good enough for Inferno. You actually have to be farming and dying in Inferno to have any chance at getting gear that will make you more survivable Inferno. So there's a huge frustration there, in that you've essentially got to be a walking pinata for a long time until you happen to get lucky or get enough gold to buy something on the auction house that'll make you be able to survive. You can't farm Hell for it, which is really, really frustrating.
Mm-hmm. And I also hate the fact that these legendaries and the stats that are on them, the fact that you can get a legendary at a low level or a mid-grade level, I don't think it should have been done that way. Legendaries need to be top tier. They need to be level cap required. They need to be legendaries for a reason. If I get a level 30 legendary, I shouldn't have to replace it. A blue that drops shouldn't have better stats than it at like level 35. It should carry me through at least 10 levels at least. I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna secretly kind of fix the way the loot that drops, or kind of adjust the stats a little bit, the multipliers. I don't know if they're going to announce something like that, but their loot system right now that they have it's just severely broken. I don't like it at all.
I think they're gonna have to do something with legendaries, because right now the best legendary in the game, the weapon terms, the best legendary in the game might have 600 DPS. And in Inferno, you can find a blue sword that's got over 1,000 DPS easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so legendaries are almost irrelevant, because when it comes to weapons, DPS trumps pretty much everything else that could exist on that weapon. And so you've got an item. I don't know how much more common a blue is than a legendary, but it's probably something like 1,000,000 times more common to drop. And for it to be better is just ridiculous. So I'm sure that they will make changes to legendaries. Hopefully what they do at the same time is improve the affixes that are available on items. So there are a whole lot of affixes. If you look on the auction house and search by affix, there are hundreds of them, but none of them are that useful. Really, for your class, all you want is whatever your class's damage statistic is, whether that's strength or dex or intelligence, plus vitality, and you're not with a few exceptions, like attack speed or lifesteal, you don't really care about anything else. All you want is your class stat and vitality, and there's nothing interesting or exciting in the affix pool, which is, for a game as heavily loot-centric as Diablo, is really frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
I got one legendary going through Nightmare. I think I was in Act 3, and it was a bow, like a level 30 something bow. And I was like, really? The
Thanks,
one
Blizzard.
legendary that I get? Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, if you're gonna give me a legendary, give me something I can use. You know? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like. I don't really have a problem with farming and finding gear that's not appropriate for me. That has always been a part of Diablo, and I'm totally okay with that. Yeah, my problem is that there's not enough variety in it. Yeah. Okay. Right. The only other things that I have on my list left to talk about really are the auction house. So even the parts of it that are working are only kind of working. So I don't know if you guys have tried searching for high-level gems, but they're broken. You just can't find them. You can list them and not see them. And the auction house is continuously going unavailable. Trying to sell some things is giving timeout errors. I don't know. Have you guys used the auction house much? Have you ran into any of these issues?
I've had a lot of issues with it. Almost on some days to the point where I don't want to use it.
Yeah.
Just because it's I'll try and buy something and I'll get a million different errors, and then I'll log out, come back, and it's told me that it didn't win the auction, but it gave me my money back, and then I go back to find the item and it's not there, or I'll bid on the item and it's already sold out. The sold out thing I don't have an issue with, but when I try to bid on something that I really want, or not bid, but buy something out that I really want, and I get an error as opposed to it just coming to me, it's kind of a pain.
Yeah, I had a bad experience too. Like, I was trying to buy something through the auction house. I think it was like 40,000 gold, and I tried to purchase it, and it errored out in the middle of the purchase, and it took my gold, and it held it for almost an entire day.
Yeah.
And I was like,
an issue I've
really?
had too.
Yeah. So.
And even when it's working properly, if you bid on an item and then you get outbid, you don't get that gold back until the auction finishes. So you can't take that money and use it to make a higher bid. You have to have more gold available to do that, which is ridiculous. So if you've got 200,000 gold and you bid 100,000 on something, someone outbids you with 110, you can't raise it to 120 because you've only got 90,000 left. It's the auction house.
They should just take WoW's auction house and drop it in. It'd be perfect.
It was the one.
WoW had a decent auction house.
It does. It does. This was the one system that I was sure that Blizzard would get right because so much was hinging on it. And I'm glad that the real money auction house has been delayed because not only are the items currently available not really appropriate to be spending real money on because they're so broken right now, the whole system, but also the auction house itself is nowhere near reliable enough. Like, George, if it was holding your gold for a day, that's one thing. If it was holding your real money for a day, I'm sure you would be less happy about that.
No, I know as far as the real money stuff goes, I don't know if this has been posted anywhere or if anybody's talked about it, but I've seen an outbreak of hacking problems where people will log into their characters and everything will be gone. Just like old-fashioned WoW hacking, a gold farmer, logs into your account, sells off something, goes into your stash, sells everything, and takes the gold. If someone hacks into your account and you've got a real money account tied into that, that is a huge liability, and it might be in the terms of service agreement that hey, Blizzard's not hands off on this. It's your responsibility and your risk that you take. But I have a big feeling that that's another reason why it was pushed back, is that the recent outbreak of hacks that people are logging in to find that their items are gone. Has kind of worried them a little bit. Also I noticed that when you type in your password, and this was on Reddit also, that it's not case sensitive. It's a very old way of I guess keeping passwords.
Well, that's
They were saying that none of them have ever been that way.
no. That's totally fine though. Case sensitivity doesn't add any security to a password.
Yeah.
And if you look at like Facebook, Google, those aren't case sensitive either.
But I would think that, any type of standard password would require, case sensitivity, a special character, and a number. The company I work for, I mean, that's by default. Any type of password that we set or have people set, I mean, it's got to have those requirements, just by default. I would think in the security world that would be a normal thing,
The
but
adding numbers and special characters though doesn't necessarily do a whole lot to increase the security of a password. Really, it comes down to length. Like a long password, even of just A to Z characters, is always more secure than any combination of special characters that's short. But to be honest, I think they'll bypass all of that. I think that the real money auction house, if and when it does become available, they'll just say you need an authenticator on your account before you can access this. I just don't see them taking the risk any other way. Maybe they will, but I wouldn't if I was them. Do you guys both have authenticators on your accounts, by the way?
I do.
Not me. Ever since I quit Warcraft about a year ago, I kind of just got rid of my authenticator. I didn't care if my account got hacked on Warcraft. I kind of just left it the way it was. I haven't added one recently, but I will probably be adding one on my phone.
Yeah.
Pretty soon.
The Android and I suppose iPhone ones are free. They're the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend that to everybody playing.
I feel really bad for the people that don't have a phone that can download that authenticator, and they have to do a dial-in authentication to where they have to dial this number and get a code and type it in. It's kind of a pain just to do that to log into your game. I know it's for security reasons, but
I don't even know how that works. So that's not living in America. I never really worried about looking at that option. But how does every time you log in, you have to ring a number and then they give you a code?
Yeah, I think, and I haven't tried it, but I think the way it works is you call this number, and then the automated system will spit back 6 numerical digits that are viable for the next 60 seconds. And then you could just type that in, and then you hang up and you're done.
Don't they have like a little keychain authenticator that you can get that gives you a number?
Yeah.
I don't know if those are free, though.
They're not that
No, they're not.
Like,
but for people who don't have, like a smartphone who can just do that. I mean, most people today have smartphones, I would think.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I was going to ask what's to stop a hacker from ringing that same phone number and getting the code that would log them in?
There's probably a security pin that if you do want to set up over the phone authentication, it's like on the back of most credit cards, there's like a 3-digit pin code that you only know that you would have to type in before you get that code. Okay. I would think that's how it would work.
Right. Anyway, so besides the point, whatever form of authentication you get, I would definitely recommend getting it no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the end of our topic list. So this has been a reasonably long podcast, I think. Let me just check the timing on this.
A little over an hour.
Yeah, over an hour. So just so we don't come across as entirely negative Nancy's, is there anything positive that you guys want to say about Diablo 3? Like, I don't know about you guys, but ever since release, I have been playing it a whole lot, and aside from all of the negative sounding issues that we've been talking about for the last hour, I am really enjoying myself. What about you guys?
Go ahead, Brandon.
I definitely am. It's basically when I get off work, go to the gym, come home, and that's all I do. I've been late every day to work because I've been staying up too late. But yeah, no, it's been really fun. Overall, completely enjoyable. I mean, earlier I know I said something about Act 4, which was kind of a letdown for me, but the game as a whole, just being what it is, has been really fun. And the harder difficulties have really made me switch up my strategy, and it's been sort of a challenge for me, which I really like. You shouldn't be able to just run through it. So overall, I'm really satisfied with it. It's been really good.
Yeah. How about you, George?
I don't have that many complaints. I'm happier with it than I'm unhappy with
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I really do. I love the game. It's definitely a game that I'm going to be playing for a very long time. Especially, I think Blizzard has 2 expansions that are planned out for Diablo 3. So I'm really looking forward to that. And the problems that they do have now, I have no doubt. And I'm not a Blizzard fanboy, but they usually do fix what they need to fix within time. So I have full confidence that the problems with loot, the way the bosses work, I think they're going to adjust that as time goes on. So I'm kind of just taking it easy now. Like the first week I played it a lot. I'm trying to slow down just a little bit. I don't want to rush into Inferno under geared. So I'm kind of taking my time, going through all the levels completely in hell mode, and just kind of see what happens with the way the gear drops are going to be working in the future. So I'm looking forward to playing it.
Yeah.
More.
Fantastic. Yep, I'm in the same boat as you guys. So I'm in Act 1 of Inferno as a so-called underpowered monk, and I'm actually loving getting my face totally smashed in.
I was going to ask how's that going for you?
Having to, because every now and then I will sit and I'll re-gear and I'll think of a new build combination, and then I'll go back out into the highlands of Act 1 and it'll actually work on a champion pack, and I'll think like, yes, this is awesome, I'm actually making progress. It's really slow, but yeah, overall I am having a lot of fun with the game, and I do expect to continue to play it for a long time and hopefully continue to make podcasts about it with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alright, I think that is going to wrap it up, everybody. So any final thoughts or comments from either of you?
Got nothing.
No? Alright.
I'm good.
Okay, visit us at don'tcritme.com or on Facebook at don'tcritme.com. Thank you very much for listening and or watching, and we hope to do this regularly, so we will see you next time. I am Lawrence, and I'll let you guys say goodbye for yourselves.
See you guys.
Later.
Alright, and we are done.